Hey, friend, welcome to the podcast. You Are Significant, the podcast where you will hear real stories from real people, and we will get down into the truths of your own significance. You were created on purpose for a purpose with seeds of greatness inside of you. Now, let's get down to it. In the studio today with Paige Killian. I'm so excited to have her on with us. And Paige and I recently met at a line breakthrough this year. And as soon as I met Paige, I just saw her energy, her love for people. She has a service-based business, organizing, and she has a #1 podcast, a #1 book. And I'm so honored to have you here with us today, Paige.
Thank you so much. I loved meeting you there at a line. That was so great. And when you started talking, I just wanted to hug you because, my Tennessee girl came out whenever I heard your Alabama-ness. I was like, oh, Darlene's my people. She's my people. So that was great.
That's how I felt too. I was like, there's something about this girl because it's rare to meet someone who has a lot of energy and is so positive. And when we meet someone, you can feel it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Kindred spirits. So I wanted to get started and let you share a little bit about what it was like growing up for you. So you're from Tennessee?
Yes, from Tennessee, born and raised in a really tiny town called Humboldt, Tennessee. And then my dad and his dad owned a car dealership. And when my dad got older, he just decided, older, he was, a very young married man. And I was the firstborn. And he said, I think let's take our business to the big city. And that was Memphis, Tennessee. So we moved there. We lived in a little area called Bartlett, Tennessee. And I went to Bartlett High School and grew up in the South, loving it. And we were just talking before we hit record and saying that I've now been in California, Los Angeles area, so Southern California for 20 years now.
It goes by fast, doesn't it?
It really does. And I realized I've now been in California longer than I was in Tennessee because I left Tennessee when I was 18. When I graduated college, I went to University of Tennessee. And so that's kind of crazy. But I love that I went from one place in the South to another to Southern California, right? Still had to keep the South in there.
That's so cute. I love it. So, what kept you in Southern California then?
Well, in a word, God, right? Because I feel like uh, he sort of, when you make the decision, well, we'll say again what we were just talking about is my daughter's getting baptized on Easter Sunday. So we were talking about that. Woo, woo, very excited.
Yay.
My birthday is the day before Easter this year, and then she gets baptized on Easter. We were talking about how that's just, obviously the best gift imaginable. So I'm very excited about that. And I grew up being a part of the church. That was a huge part of my life. And so I was a theater girl in college and had an opportunity to go out to California and work on a movie. And crazy enough, I don't even think I've shared this with you, Darlene. Crazy enough, when I got out here, I was thinking I was going to walk on the movie set. I had a connection with the director and thought that I was just going to be an extra. And this was just going to be an opportunity for me to do a new thing in my life, move from Tennessee to California by myself, all by myself with like 3 suitcases. And I bought a car when I moved out here and drove it to California, drove it to where I ended up living in Hollywood and walked onto the movie set 3 days after being in town. And instead of getting an extra role, when they saw my resume, because I had done theater for so many years, he said, let's give you a part. And so I, quickly read for a part and ended up getting a speaking part and got I don't know if you're aware, it's called Taft-Hartley. You would get Taft-Hartley, and that meant you would get your basically what you needed to become a SAG member, the Screen Actors Guild. And so I was Taft-Hartley. That meant I had a speaking part. And then became a member of SAG. So now whenever you see like the Screen Actors Guild Awards, I get to watch those movies, preview them, and vote on them and that kind of thing. So it's kind of like feels like another life of mine that's kind of fun and interesting. Most people don't know that about me unless they've known me for many, many years. And then ended up becoming a kindergarten teacher because I found a roommate out here who taught kindergarten and she had an opening for her assistant position. And she said, "You would be great with this." I'd been a nanny for years. I'd done some teaching when I graduated college. I lived in Florida for a hot minute and I ended up working for a government run school and I did some teaching there. And so then when I came out, I started teaching with her and I started the theater program after school. And that was really cool because I was a kindergarten teacher and they really didn't have they didn't have a program for kindergarten, first and second grade. They didn't have they didn't have a theater program for them after school. It was third grade and up. And I was like, wait a second, I got a lot of talented kids in my class. I bet they would be great. And so I ended up doing the kindergarten through second grade after school theater program. And that was
Wow.
really fun. Yeah, I got to use my background of theater, my love of kids and teaching, and that was so much fun. And then I started tutoring for a lot of these families that I would teach for if they needed some extra. This was the early days when I was a young 20 something. So for extra money, I would do that. And a lot of times I would get to their homes and I would see that their space was disorganized. And these were some of the kids that were struggling in school. They needed a little extra support. And I thought, let's get this space organized in either your room or the playroom or in the kitchen area or wherever. We would set up that right spot for them to be able to learn better by getting that space organized. So it's less chaotic, less cluttered, and they could really focus on what it was they wanted to do. And slowly but surely, the parents started calling me back up and saying, "Hey, that organization that you did for, Sally or Billy's room, whatever. Can you come do that in other areas of our home?" And I was doing it for free, Darlene, for a really long time. I would just go over after school and I'd help them get organized. And I love it. It lit me up. It made me so excited. And then I thought, wait a second, I think maybe I need to turn this into a business. I had had a couple of kiddos and my son needed me to be at home more. And it was before he went into elementary school. And I needed to spend some extra time with him. We were working through some therapies and things that he needed to do. And I wanted to be at home more. And I loved teaching. But I always say sometimes you have to give up something good to get to something great. And at the time, I
Mhm.
had to say goodbye to teaching, even though I loved it so much. At the time, I was actually teaching second grade. So kindergarten for 10 years, second grade for a few years. And so I left to be home with him more and give him the support that he needed. And I started charging for organizing services. And then it just took off after that. And I want to pause in case you have any thoughts or feelings about any of this or questions.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness. Yes, because when you were talking about space and organizing the space so that the child could do better in school, there's a definite relationship then between grades or even in adults performance, maybe promotions, and how the space at home is organized. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, I believe that when we have physical clutter around us, it actually starts to take up space in our brains, in our minds, in our heart. Feels like the inside of us is cluttered too. And especially if you're a mom, and that's that's my lane. I try to stay in my lane. I love a mom client. I was actually on the phone with one before we got on this morning because we're talking about her garage. And she's like, my daughter's gone off to college and I just have all this stuff that has moved. We did some renovations during the pandemic, and I have all this stuff that's accumulated in the garage. I can't park a car in the garage. I can't do, and time again, this is what I was hearing. And speaking of pandemic, during the pandemic, my business, my in-home organizing business really was derailed because we were quarantining. We were all looking for toilet paper and canned food. You know what I mean? It was crazy. It was crazy. And everybody was going through all of these things that they had put on hold for the longest time that were piling up, the clutter, and they weren't dealing with it because they had, 9 to 5 jobs, or they were parenting, or they're doing all these other really important things. And they just were putting that kind of stuff, the getting organizing stuff, to the side because it wasn't a priority. They weren't getting excited about it. A lot of times they wouldn't start because they felt like it was going to be such a huge, big thing.
Mm.
And so when the pandemic hit, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to stay relevant? How is my business going to stay afloat? Because at this time I wasn't teaching anymore. That was my sole income. That's what I was doing. And I thought, I love podcasts. I'm going to start a podcast. I did not know how to do that. I am not tech savvy. We were laughing that I was like, I got to figure out how to get on StreamYard. I don't even know. So, baby steps, one step at a time. I was like, okay, she sent me this link. Let's hit that button. Okay, now it's telling me I can't open it in my browser. I got to get a new browser. What does that mean? So
There's
funny enough,
hope. You give
yeah,
us hope, Paige.
funny enough, if I can do this, I'm here to tell you, if your listeners are hearing this, anybody can do it. Okay. Anybody can do it if I can do it. So I started this podcast, and obviously God gave me some incredible human beings who know a whole lot more about podcasting than I do. He just handpicked them and dropped them right in my life. And I started working with them. They're actually based in London. And so that's pretty cool. And so they helped me get it off the ground. And I started talking about my 3 E's philosophy, which I created. It's a 3-step strategy for really prioritizing whatever it is you're wanting to get done. So if you're setting and accomplishing goals, we do that. If you work with me as my client, I have 2 separate ways that you can work with me. If it's in that organizing world and we're organizing our physical space, we use that 3 E's philosophy, this 3-step strategy, to get organized from beginning to end. Get that space what you want it to be, so that it declutters your mind as well. And you can show up as a better human being in your life, as a parent, as a person who's working, as someone who is enjoying a great hobby and they want to focus more on that. Maybe it has to do with a sport or something, and they can't even find the contents, the equipment that they need to go do and enjoy this sport or this, artistic thing that they're wanting to do because their space is disorganized. So that's one way that we work together. And then there's another opportunity where I just kept feeling, so I started the Mom's Organization Motivation podcast, and that's Mom's Organization Motivation, MOM. So it's like the Mom Pod. And so I would share my 3 simple steps for getting organized in all the different rooms of your house and areas of your life. And then I had some encouraging people say, you need to put this in a book. So the Mom Pod ended up jumping so fast to, oh, this is funny. I just did a little thumbs up and I got a thumbs up icon. Did you see that? Thumbs up worthy. I'm super excited about it. So the Mom Pod ended up going to the top of the charts. It ended up winning a couple of awards. It still sits to this day, and we're at almost the 4-year mark. It still sits in the top 1% of podcasts globally, which is just wild to me. It's listened to in more than 100 countries, Darlene. And I'm like, really, this Southern accent plays in the 100 countries? How is that possible? How are these people listening to me? It's hilarious. And then the book came out. And again, people just wanted to have that simplified 3-step strategy. And so I talk about that in my book for getting organized and also doing other things in your life. And so then that skyrocketed and it hit bestseller the day that it came out before I could even have breakfast. So just wild.
Wow.
Absolutely.
God
Yeah.
is amazing. When He wants to take our talent and use it, He does.
Yes. And again, I cannot even take credit for a lot of this. I'm like the vessel, you have these great ideas, but until you are making sure that these things are in alignment with what God has planned for your life. And you're really keeping your eyes open to who he's putting in your life to help you with that next step when you don't know. It's so wonderful. I feel so blessed by the people who have helped me figure all this stuff out, from, the podcast agency to the publisher, Landon Hill Press, and all these people who have helped me so much. I'm so grateful to them. So that when I got this sort of download, I don't know if you think of it like that, when God's just talking to your heart, I would wake up in the middle of the night, Darlene, and I just was like, you have got to be kidding me. I kept getting the same message over and over again. It's time to pivot. It's time to pivot. And I was like, wait, God, I don't want to pivot anymore. I really like how things are going. This is great. I was also back, the pandemic stuff had settled down. So I was back in homes organizing. I was still getting to do the podcast. I was getting asked to speak at a lot of events, and my book would be in the back. And so then they would come and talk to me about the book after. And I thought, what do you mean it's time to pivot? I like what's happening right now, And then remember how I said I started feeling like sometimes you have to leave something good to get to something great. There's like a next step. So I started the Time to Pivot podcast last year. And in the first week, it started charting, and it's now in the top 10% of podcasts globally. And again, it's because I feel like I'm listening to things that God's putting on my heart and listening to what my clients are saying. And what I found when I would go in those awesome moms' homes and they would be getting organized and we would be doing that, it freed up this extra brain space for them to start thinking about other areas of their life that they wanted to pursue. And so the conversation started going differently. It was not like, how do I organize all of my extra things underneath my sink, my skincare and all of that underneath my bathroom sink. And how do I get the kids' toys under control? And it started being, how did you start a business? How did you start a podcast? How do you know who to go to get a book in the world? How do you get on stages and talk to these people? How are you working with these coaching clients? How was all of that? And we'd be sitting in their floor and we'd be making piles of donate and keep and figuring out stuff. And at the same time, I'm coaching them through, what is your message? What is your story? What do you want to share? And it just caught fire. And so I started having these people on the Time to Pivot podcast, and they're sharing the ways that they've pivoted in their life when they're in the middle of a transition. And it can be hard. It can be scary. I have people talk about really serious illnesses that they're diagnosed with, or caring for a sick family member, or showing up as a person who you want to be the best, whatever you could be, best parent, best spouse, best coworker or business owner, and so that's kind of another area now where I'm using those 3 E's, the simplified strategy, to get from the beginning of an idea to where you want to be in setting and accomplishing your goals. So it keeps evolving. It keeps changing.
Yeah, that is amazing. And it just makes me think about, because this podcast is Your Significant, and we're always looking at how God has shown you your significance. And sometimes it's through, and maybe oftentimes through, trials that we go through that, and I know you hear this all the time with your clients as you're organizing stuff, because when you're talking about organizing stuff, it made me think about, you know, the flip side of that, where like you're talking about being cluttered because you have clutter. But I think oftentimes too, don't you agree that there is clutter because their mind was already cluttered? It started internally and then it manifests in the physical realm. And so I would imagine that a lot of times you end up feeling like a therapist trying to help your clients decide it's okay to let go of some of their clutter, at least some of it.
Absolutely. And I'll
Maybe
even tell them,
tears, maybe anger, like
yeah,
maybe present through a lot of emotions too.
yes. And I'll tell them too, sometimes our stuff is really nice, or we spent a lot of money on it, or it was a gift that is very significant. And it's unfortunate when it starts taking on that clutter title. Clutter doesn't just mean, trash, that you're not throwing your trash away or that you're not recycling like you should. It's not that. It's truly your life, your schedule, your mind can become cluttered. And just like you said, what is it? The chicken or the egg? What came first? Is it the mental clutter or the physical clutter? And it can be different for different people. Sometimes when we have children and we bring extra bodies into our home, and there's all the gear in the beginning, right? It's like,
Mhm.
the
The car
stroller.
seat, the stroller, the toys, the changing table.
Absolutely. So you're literally moving a new human into your life and you got stuff. Okay. So that is the kind of thing that I say, listen, don't fault yourself for that. These are things that you're needing. It's making your life more convenient. You need these things. Then we take a look at, what do you actually not need that you've got in your space? It's either not bringing you joy, or it is not serving you anymore. It's outdated. It's taking on that clutter title because it's not being used, even if it's great. And so we do process through, very much like a therapy session. And I've been called, people call me their hype girl, because I'm like, you got this. You can totally do this. It's going to be great. And we talk about what is going to be the life that you want to be living on the other side of this, and how can we shortcut that process. That's where the 3 E's come in: your essentials, enhancements, and extras. We talk about that. And that was born from me being a kindergarten teacher, by the way.
Mm.
I started sharing with my kids 3 steps when we were in transition. So, like, we would be outside on the playground after having lunch, and I might give them 3 directions to focus on, like, grab your lunch bags, go use the restroom, and meet me on the carpet. Okay, those 3 simple steps. And then it would be, when they would be on the carpet, we would, if I hadn't said go use the restroom, someone would inevitably raise their hand and say, I need to go use the bathroom. And then if I didn't say pick up your lunch bag, somebody would be like, I left my lunch bag outside, in the middle of teaching a lesson. And and so then we would go from the carpet to the table for them to, we had just, teach the lesson on the carpet, and they would go to the table to implement the lesson. And so I would give them those 3 steps, and they started catching. They would hold up their 3 fingers and they would wait for me to say the 3 things. And it would be something as simple as, like, go to your table group, write your name on the paper, smile at me when you're ready, something like that. And what we were doing is we were intentionally moving through those transitions. And it was enough to make them stop and use their brains, because they had to think about those 3s, but it was not overwhelming and stressful. So when I got into the moms' homes to do the organizing, I realized they were usually in a time of transition as well. And they wanted me to come in, and they would say, it was so funny. I actually got the title of my book out of this. The title of my book is I've Got You, Girlfriend. The subtitle is Why Getting Organized and Living This Mom Life is Not a Solo Mission, because it is not. We should totally be in this together. But the joke about,
Yes.
yeah, the joke about I've got you, girlfriend, is because they would meet me at the end of the driveway when I would get there, and they would start apologizing. And they would be like, oh, it's usually not this bad. Like, we just had a birthday, or it was just the holidays, or, we just got in late last night from a trip, and then we had baseball and da-da. And I would immediately say, don't worry, I'm a mom too. I get how this happens. I've got you, girlfriend. I've got you, girlfriend. And so it started like that. And I realized we are all going through this together. And even though as adults we are capable of handling more than 3 steps, we've got a lot going on in our brains. We have a lot to process. We have things, I mean, not even to mention like childhood trauma or stuff that's going on in a marriage, or maybe you and your family or your best friend are not having the best time together, anything like that. And then on top of that, you need to show up to be a great parent, and you want to have your house organized, and you want to pursue some of these things that you feel like God is putting on your heart. I mean, it is enough to make a sane person crazy.
Mhm.
And so we would
It
sit,
takes a lot of space
yeah,
to try to organize that, because every calling on your life that you have requires some physical things too.
sure.
And I feel like the age I am, midlife, um, I think it's harder to be organized because I don't want to let go of everything from my kids' childhood or even my childhood. And that I'm old enough that I've lost grandparents or lost parents. So I have furniture and I have things that have been given to me that are a physical memory of them. And so it's maybe not that I'm even in love with that piece of furniture, but this was like, 3 generations. This secretary was in our family for 3 generations. So it's special to have it. And you don't want to just put it in storage, where you don't get to enjoy it and think about the meaning of it. So here's this thing in my house that doesn't necessarily match the rest of my decor, but there's a reason why it's here. And then you have all the things that, is into the future, what I'm working on, what I'm creating. And it's not just me, it's me and my husband and my son. And even, my daughters have moved out, but my grandchildren come over, I've got their toys and so yeah, a house can only hold so much. And when you've got like 2,200 square feet and you're trying to encapsulate and do it in a beautiful way that's functional, it's like, wow.
Absolutely. And this is why I stay in business, because this is very familiar. The things that you're saying are so true and they're so real, and they can really cause you to stay stuck if you're not identifying those things and deciding, do I need that physical representation, or can I take a photo of that cool thing and I can either sell it or I can gift it to someone else, donate it, and they can actually use that thing and they can love that thing. Now, if you think about that amazing secretary, am I thinking, is that the cool where it rolls down? You have like the top that rolls down like the desk.
It's the door that opens, and when you open it, it makes a little desk. And ours has a glass door that opens and shelving so you can store, like, I don't know why they made it that way. Our family has always stored dishes in there.
Okay,
I
okay.
don't know what the original design thought was, but we've
Well,
combined dishes with, like, my in-laws that had it before, they kept all their bills and everything in there and really did use it as a desk, the desk side of it. So,
I'm having flashbacks. I remember when we had one of those as a child growing up. I do. And the thing is, it sounds like it is actually still functional in some way for you, however you're using it, however people used it in the past. So that's exciting. That's one of the questions I will always ask is it functional? Are you using it? Are you actively using it? Does it just have more, no disrespect, I'm sure the dishes are beautiful, does it have more clutter inside? Is it another thing that's holding more things? And
yeah.
does it bring you joy? And then the size of it. So I always talk about too, what does your house allow for? If that is something that's really special, when you walk by it, you're like, that is so cool. I love that generations before me in our family had this. This is super cool. And maybe it's one of those things where when the kids get older, they get their own place. They decide they want it because they need a desk, they need storage for dishes or bills, that kind of thing. And so you just start to go through and you look at your house differently. It's always a good idea to have someone who doesn't live there all the time and have that sentimental attachment to your things to come in and
Mhm.
view it in a fresh new way with a different perspective, and just challenge you on those things in a kind, loving, respectful way, but challenge you and say, okay, sure, maybe we're just going to use this example. Maybe it is holding these dishes. Is that great? Are these dishes, are you so glad that you have this thing to hold these dishes? Or could you hold these dishes somewhere else in another cabinet in your kitchen, or, something like that? Because
Mhm.
you have to ask yourself, if this were to leave, would I miss it for a little bit? Maybe. Okay. Would I feel really great about the next owners who are going to get it? Sure, that's exciting. It's going to go on to live another day. Am I going to feel guilt because I got rid of this, whatever, family heirloom? Or, and you can be applying this to anything. This can be like your childhood or your kids' trophies from when they played soccer or baseball or ice skating or, and it's like, am I going to feel guilty that I'm getting rid of these? And how long am I going to actually feel guilty about that? I'm really like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have gotten rid of that thing or whatever. And then a week or a month later, you're just like, I am so glad that we have gained this extra space. It is not taking up physical clutter and mental clutter, or mental space. This is so nice.
Mhm.
And, you just have to ask yourself, what would it look like if I did get rid of this? And also, I have to tell you, my grandmommy, she was my girl. She passed a couple years ago, and they called me, of course, immediately when she passed to say, could you come and help with cleaning out some of this, or could you come and, just be here if there's anything that you want to take of hers. And I took her necklace. There was a necklace that she got for me when I was a jewelry stylist, and she wore it in almost every single photo. And so I took that necklace, and it hangs. I purposely made a little display of hanging necklaces in my closet on the wall. So when I walk in, if I'm not choosing to wear that necklace that day, which I might choose to wear that necklace, I gave a talk soon after she passed, and I wore that necklace. It just made me feel closer to her. And if I'm not wearing it, I still get to see it, and I'll walk by and I'll just touch it and I'll say, "Hey, grandmommy," or like, "Love you, grandmommy," and I'll touch it. So it's things like that. It's like, do we need a whole big secretary, that big desk, or do we need a little thing where we remember those people that's not taking up that physical space
Mhm.
on the title of clutter? And grandmommy had some really cool stuff at her house, but it didn't match my decor. I wasn't going to pay to have it shipped from her place in Tennessee to California, and I had to make peace with the fact that grandmommy's now living her best afterlife in heaven. She doesn't care if I took some of
Yes.
the furniture. You know what I mean? So you can release some of that guilt in that way as well. So there's different ways. I work with my clients in different ways. We talk about that. That was a great example. Thanks for letting me use that example.
Yes. And, I think because I work with a lot of women who are in recovering from codependency, and my freebie that I give is a guide to help women get their life organized on the daily, like your daily things, like when a traumatic thing has happened, which can happen often sometimes. Um, what do I got to do today so that I'm on top of my self care and I'm on top of my kids' care and I'm on top of work? I'm like, because when you really have a rough time, sometimes you forget to call in and say, I can't come in today, or I'm going to be late, or sign the field trip form for the child so they aren't traumatized. And so, this is really relevant. What you're doing is so relevant to healing. And so many times it's on different levels, but so many women, and there's men too, who have codependency, these tendencies where it's like, I don't feel strong enough or I can't function on my own. I need help. And I love that you've incorporated today more than once, like, we need each other. And that's okay. It's not a brokenness that dictates that we need each other. That's part of how God made us. In the very beginning, Adam needed a companion and none of the animals were suitable. And God made Eve from his rib. And so it wasn't good for man to be alone. It's not good for us to be alone. And we all come together with different talents and gifts and abilities and vision. And it's almost like a song where you have all these different instruments playing, and when you put us all together, it creates this beautiful harmony. So I just love so much that that's what you're doing. And so talk a little bit more about your book and your podcast, and let us know like where we can go to tune in to you.
Thank you so much. By the way, you gave me chills when you said that about a song, music, and all those parts that come together to make something really beautiful. I love that. I love that imagery. So very nice. I love to just be able to share my website, first of all, which is everythingwithstyle.com. I named my organizing company Everything with Style because we can do things in our own style that works for us. And, sometimes that changes with what season we're in. Whether it's the 4 seasons outside in nature or it's the season of having little ones or having school age kids or teenagers. I'm in the teenager club now. Ooh, Jesus.
Ooh.
Thank you.
Extra
Thank you.
prayers.
Yes. Hopefully she's wonderful and kind and loving still. Let's just pray that that stays. But truly, so we are in these different seasons. And what is your style in that season of your life? And so if you go to everythingwithstyle.com, you can find everything there. You can find me on Instagram at everythingwithstylemom. And same as on TikTok, but girl, I have not jumped on this TikTok bandwagon. I started it and I think I've posted one thing and that's
It's okay.
everybody telling me, they're like, Paige, you need to be on TikTok. And I'm like, listen, I just need Jesus. Okay. That's what I need. And then just back off about telling me another platform I need to be on. But so I am technically there. So if you want to have a conversation with me, we can do that. I have to learn how to respond to you in TikTok, but certainly you can find me.
You can do a video response in TikTok.
What? Blown my mind.
I
No.
know. I just learned that the other day, and I think the video responses get views, and that video has like 62 views, and I'm just replying to someone's comments.
What?
So
I had
it's
no idea.
pretty interesting in TikTok the way it all
Oh
works.
my goodness.
Not
Okay,
boring.
that's for sure.
If you
Well,
really like to have it the fun way, you're gonna love the TikTok platform.
I might have to get on over there and
Mhm.
do a little more research in there. Well, I will tell you that for sure Instagram is the best way. Everything with Style Mom.
Instagram.
I
Okay.
will be there.
Put a star by Instagram.
Yes, yes. And then my book, you can get it on Amazon or you can find it's whenever you go to my website, there's a place that you can click that says book. We like to keep it really simple. So you can click on that.
Yes.
But the book is now on Amazon. You can listen to it or you can read it in 4 different ways. So it is paperback, hardcover, the Kindle, which is the e-reader, and it's on audio now. And I did that because I
Ooh.
had the podcasts with an S at the end, podcasts. That's so crazy. And I just thought, I think this is how a lot of my listeners, clients, people who would be consuming the book would enjoy it is to listen to it. Because I don't know about you, but I'm just constant. I feel like I'm always in the car. And so I just always have on a podcast or I have a book on, almost said book on tape. That really gave me
Audible. I love Audible.
Audible. That's right. You can get it on Audible and
Book
listen
on
there.
tape from the
Yeah,
library.
totally. But okay, so you're going to get this because you're in the South. If I was driving from my home in Tennessee to college in Tennessee, so from Memphis-ish to Knoxville, I would go start at the Cracker Barrel and I would go and get the book on, okay, I'm not that old. I'd get the book on DVD. Okay. And then I still had some on tape though. Let's not play. And then when I would get to the Cracker Barrel in Knoxville, I would drop it off there. You know,
Wow, that's
yeah.
so cool.
And so then I would drive the other way from college back home.
Yeah,
Cracker Barrel.
our age, those of us in our 40s, we have seen everything.
Really?
Like,
Yes.
I can remember 8 tracks. My parents had a few 8 tracks that they
Yeah.
played in the car or something. And then my mom had like a record player piece of furniture.
Uh-huh.
And then we had the big ones and the little ones. She loved Barry Manilow. And
Oh.
then, then it went to tapes. And man, tapes was the thing. You could record on those
Mhm.
and splice them. And, if you got real fancy. And then, CDs came out eventually, like as adults for us. And now, like, there's no like physical thing. It's all digital.
Wow.
You gotta
I
have
was
Spotify, Apple,
yes.
and even your movies. I kept our movies, and I finally some of this is my husband. I'm going to blame him.
Do it.
But, you know, he wanted to keep the cases, and we weren't watching those things. We didn't even have a DVD player anymore. And so I finally put them in storage. I was like, okay, we're going to get them further away from the house, and you can see how much you really go to storage to go get them, and then maybe he'll let me actually donate them or whatever.
Yeah, that's
So,
pretty funny. I mean, I do understand that mentality where it's like, okay, can we just remove it for a little bit? That's actually one of the tactics that I say. If you're trying to decide if you want to get rid of a thing, go stick it in a closet where you know where it is, right? We can't do totally out of sight, out of mind, but stick it over here in a closet in a bag and set a reminder, because chances are you're not going to remember it's there. Set yourself a reminder for a few weeks later to be like, oh, that those cases for the DVDs that we can't ever watch again because we don't have a DVD. Did I miss them? I did not. I think it's time to let them go.
it's time to it's officially okay.
Yes, yes.
But, you know, our generation has been through all of those changes, like, and that's just that. There's like, let's don't even talk about the telephone or that kind of thing. Like my grandmother used to mail me a letter every week.
Oh,
I know, and I have saved those. I haven't thrown those away.
as you
So,
should. I would
yeah,
never be the organizer to tell you to
she
get
would
rid of
send me cartoons from the newspaper and clip out a family circus and fold it up in the letter, and
it.
yeah,
I
special
used to I used to like the Peanuts, the Charlie Brown and then Garfield. I would like to watch those, or not watch those. Listen to me. Listen to me.
It's hard to know which word to use. Like, how did I take these in?
Yeah. How did I consume that information? Oh yeah, I read it.
I
Oh
read
yeah.
it. Reading.
I was laughing with a friend the other day. Oh my gosh, we were cracking up because I said it is so weird how you will have the inclination to tap something on a screen and then you realize it's like your TV or your laptop. You can't tap it. And the other day I was in the kitchen. We have one of those open, it's like a living room that's right off of our kitchen. So I was in the kitchen and the kids were watching something and I was kind of far away and I was trying to read either the subtitle, I was trying to read something and I was far away and I had this knee-jerk reaction to, I don't know how I'm going to describe this right now to the people who are listening, but where you pinch your fingers together and you hold them up in the air and you open your fingers like you're maximizing, you're enlarging. I was in my kitchen looking across the way at my TV and I had this feeling of like,
Enlarging it like
I
that.
was like, what in the world? This
Hey,
is,
that could work at some point. All they got to do is invent it.
oh my
And
gosh.
so much is based off of energy. Like that could be a whole nother discussion, but um, yeah, so much of what we're doing now is really based off our energy, not physical. So,
Well,
well, I've enjoyed this so much, Paige. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us today. It's been so, so good. I can't wait to learn more by going and listening to your podcasts and reading your book.
thank you so much. Yes, if you would like to consume this with your ear and not read something, you can head over either to the Moms Organization Motivation Podcast or what I'm doing now, which is the Time to Pivot podcast. And we still talk about organization over there too, because I can't get it out of my mind. But thank you. I'm honored. Thank you for asking me to be on here today. And I look forward to talking with you in the future. And we'll probably end up seeing each other at some other personal growth summit or conference again, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in to You Are Significant. I hope this episode inspired you to embrace your own God-given purpose. If this episode inspired you and blessed you, would you please share it out with a friend who needs to be reminded of their own significance? And remember to hit subscribe. Until next time, remember to walk in faith, find the joy, and stand in your significance.